Coming to you live from Brit's Pub in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is GovLove, a podcast about local government. GovLove is produced by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. We engage the brightest minds in local government. I'm Dan Bolin, a local government attorney and partner at the Ansel Law Firm in Chicago. Today I'm joined by a returning guest. She visited us in 2019 as the Director of Long Range Planning for the City of Minneapolis to discuss the Minneapolis 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Today she's a principal at Urban3, a pioneering land use economics and geoanalytics consultancy. Heather Worthington is here. Heather, welcome back to GovLove.
Thanks, Dan. It's nice that you're not tired of hearing from me.
It's been 5 years. We need to catch up. It's a busy weekend here in Minneapolis.
Yes, it is.
The American Planning Association National Planning Conference is here. The American Society for Public Administration Conference is here. All the regular, special, outstanding stuff in Minneapolis is here. I've never been. I'm excited to check it all out.
I can't believe you haven't been to the Twin Cities. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's Minnesota nice. I thought it was going to be. I thought we were like close to Santa's house,
right?
But close to the North Pole. It's a beautiful weekend.
It is. We brought out the really nice weather for you, but we'll put it back when you leave.
well, thank you. Hopefully, I will travel safely back, and then you'll return back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Right.
But while we're here, we need to catch up about the Minneapolis 2040 plan and your work today at Urban3. But first, let's get started with our signature lightning round to get to know you better. Where were you born, and how did the doctor in the delivery room know you were going to be an urban planner?
Oh my gosh. Well, so I was born in Lansing, Michigan at Sparrow Hospital, and I'm pretty sure that the doctor knew from my footprints because that was back in the day when they oddly footprinted babies. I don't know if they still do that.
Oh, so did the prints look like a floodplain map or a zoning map?
That's right. Oh. And I think that's it.
Oh, so
but I'm not actually a planner, so maybe he just thought, oh, this was going to be an amazing city manager. I don't know.
Well, I'm not a planner either, but I play one on TV.
That's right.
And so, but we get by, and I think you qualify as a planner.
I can play one too.
Yeah.
I know my way around a zoning map, and I can explain Euclidean versus form-based. So
what happened after you were born in Lansing? What happened next for you?
Well, I think, as a kid, my dad was a police officer, so I think I always wanted to work in local government in some way.
Yeah.
And I got dragged down to City Hall a lot and spent a lot of time talking to the mayor of Lansing, who was a hoot at that time. He was really a funny guy, Mayor Graves. And I don't know, it must have worn off on me because here I am, 45 years later, and I've had a great career in local government. It's been fantastic.
I agree. That's why you're back. But when you say you were dragged down to City Hall, you were dragged down to the outside of the police station, not inside.
Yeah, not inside the police station. No, not arrested.
Not inside the jail.
Exactly. I rode in the front seat of the squad car, not the back seat.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. No, I went with my dad everywhere, and I think it does. I think little kids do kind of imprint on their parents that way. I mean, you see a lot of families where dad was a lawyer, the daughter's a lawyer, grandpa was a city manager, the kids are city managers. I mean, it happens, so.
Yeah. So when did you leave Lansing? When did you leave Lansing?
I left Lansing when I got married in 1992. But my husband and I both grew up in that area, and we moved here because of his job. We moved here to the Twin Cities, and the Twin Cities is kind of a unique area in terms of the size and just sort of what I would call the cultural and social offerings. Yeah. So the only other region in the nation that's sort of like the Twin Cities is the Chicago area, and I think that's what's kept us here so long, is that we really love it here.
Yeah, I like it so far. I've been here for 18 hours.
18 whole hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I'm going to stay the rest of the weekend.
At least till Tuesday, right?
Yeah,
cool.
until Tuesday,
right.
The end of the conference.
Yeah.
The time that my wife is expecting me back home.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. You can't stay forever.
You know what? My wife actually did some work up here. She enjoyed it up here too. She worked on the Viking Stadium.
Right. Yeah. The Jawa ship.
Which is located on Chicago Avenue. I will remind.
Right.
Listeners.
Not to confuse people.
Yeah. That's right. But you got here. So you've been here since in Minneapolis area since 1992?
Since 1992. We moved away for a couple of years. We lived in Wichita, Kansas, and Corpus Christi, Texas, but we came back here. So.
Oh, that's quite a scene change. But you're back.
It was. Yeah, it was.
Always been in Minneapolis proper or St. Paul proper?
Always in St. Paul.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
we are kind of St. Paulites.
St. Paulites.
St. Paulites.
St. Paulites.
Yeah, Minneapolitans, St. Paulites.
Oh, okay. That's
like you're a Chicagoan.
Chicago.
Right.
Oh, I see. So that's the official moniker.
Yeah, that's the label. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. What was your first gig working here when you got to St. Paul?
You know, my first gig was working for. I had kind of 3 gigs at the same time. I worked for the Minnesota Historical Society, the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and I worked for a realtor. All at the same time, because when you get out of college, you don't getting that full-time job was kind of tough.
Yeah.
And so I pieced together these part-time gigs, and that was really great for me. I didn't get into local government for another 5 years.
How'd you get into local government? How'd you get into local government?
Oh, I actually started as a community organizer.
Ooh.
And so St. Paul has these 17 district councils, and they're a form of sort of hyper-local government. And I got hired as the community organizer, executive director of one of them, St. Anthony Park, and I worked there for almost 3 years and just really cut my teeth on land use issues and economic development and neighborhood relations, community engagement, and realized, wow, I really like this, and made the pivot from wanting to be a decorative arts curator to being a city administrator.
Do you still have cool art at your house? Do you have nice art at your house?
I have art and antiques, yeah. I like art.
What's your favorite piece?
My favorite piece?
Or a favorite piece?
Gosh, I would have to say I have a break front from England, an oak break front from England that I got from a guy here in Minneapolis. He imported it, and it got damaged in the move, and I bought it from him and repaired it, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I love it.
What's a break front?
It's kind of like a hutch in your dining room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool.
I like old things.
And restoring them, much like the municipalities themselves, establishing new plans. But we'll get into that.
Good try to segue there. That was good.
You know what? I am, for our listeners, I am trying here. But picking up, so you got into local government. What was your first gig?
It was, I was hired as the assistant city administrator in Falcon Heights. And then 3 months later, I was hired as the city administrator. So I got there, and then my boss said, I'm going to Dakota County, and she left, and the mayor said, you're going to apply, right? And I said, I hadn't really planned to. I just got here. And she said, well, I think you should apply. And I did, and there it is. The rest is history.
A historic move. And what was it like being launched into that role so early on?
Oh, I was so stupid. I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. But no, it was exciting and exhilarating, and a huge learning curve. Because when you work for a small city, you do a little bit of everything, and I had to on the weekends. I'd take my turn at monitoring the lift stations, so I would be out, at midnight, on a lift station call.
Okay.
So I had to, get my shots for that and everything, and be legal in terms of dealing with human waste.
Okay.
I would also go kick out storm drains. I would do that quite a bit when it was snowy and icy. And then I would deal with, barking dog complaints and process land use requests and do the council packet. And so I did a little bit of everything because that's what you do.
How big's Falcon Heights?
Falcon Heights is just over 5,000 in population.
Oh, okay. So,
but it's right on the northern edge of St. Paul, so it's a inner ring suburb of the Twin Cities.
So how much staff? Was it you?
It was me. It was me and a finance director and a public works director and a clerk. And we had contracted police. We had our own fire department. So it was a regular functioning, a regular city. But it was very small, and it was a great space to learn.
When you were running it, it was a real functioning city.
It's still a functioning city. In fact, it's a great city. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
But it's still one of the smallest cities in the metro, and but I did, like every year we rebuilt roads, and I learned how to do road construction by working in Falcon Heights. So.
But what a great introduction to every part of local government.
It was a total gift, and I still have a very, very warm spot in my heart for Falcon Heights.
So when my wife was working on the Viking Stadium, like everybody in the office had a place on the weekends. It's a land of 10,000 lakes, I understand.
Right.
And so like everybody had a place and a boat on the weekends to go to. Is like Falcon Heights one of those places, like on the outskirts?
No.
So the lakes are further out?
Yes.
Where do they keep them all?
Where do they keep the lakes?
Yeah.
There are lakes here in Minneapolis. There's Bede-Makaska, and there's in St. Paul, there's Lake Phelan and Como Lake. So there are lakes, but I'd say generally they keep them about an hour north.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. And Falcon Heights is which?
Right.
Is which direction?
Towards Brainerd.
Which?
I think.
Which direction is?
North.
Okay.
Just straight north.
I see.
You'd hit a lot of lakes if you went straight north.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. What was next for you after Falcon Heights?
Then I went to the city of Edina.
Okay.
And I was the assistant city manager there, which was also great.
What kind of community was that?
So Edina is a city of about 50,000 during the day, and it's about 100,000 during the day and 50,000 at night.
Okay.
So it's a combination of a residential area and a commercial area. Has a pretty thriving business corridor. I did a lot of economic development work there.
Okay.
So I learned a whole new set of skills working in Edina, and it's fun to go back now. And that was the first comp plan I worked on, was in Edina.
Oh, neat.
And it's fun to go back and see that plan being put into action now. So the things we talked about are actually being built, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many years ago was that? Like the life of a plan?
2006 to 2010. So it was the 2010 comprehensive plan that we were doing.
Okay.
So
neat.
right as I left, we were adopting it and moving forward on implementing it. So.
And now it's just it's growing and it's being implemented before your eyes.
Yeah, I mean Edina doesn't have growth boundaries. It is a fully contained city, so it's redeveloping. Okay. And it's really interesting to watch them increase density in some of their precincts. And there are, of course, tensions around that because it's a very desirable community within the Twin Cities. It's fairly wealthy, and so they have their own set of issues there. But they have embraced some growth strategies that have been really interesting. So, yeah. Oh. I was there for 4 years.
And then what happened?
Then I went to Ramsey County.
Okay. Where's Ramsey County?
So Ramsey County is the home of St. Paul, the capital city. So it's the only fully urbanized county in the state.
Oh.
It's a population of about 500,000. And it's also one of the most diverse counties in the state.
Oh, neat. What did you do there?
I was the first deputy county manager that they hired. And so my job was to oversee some of the county departments, and then we restructured and I had a service team. But I'd say the hat that I wore in Ramsey County most prominently was to work on our organizational development and to do economic development for the county. And so I led the redevelopment of the Twin Cities Army Ammunition Plant there, the TCAP site. And I also worked with the Vikings to try and build a stadium in Ramsey County that ultimately got built here in Minneapolis.
Oh, interesting. So as a deputy for the county, did you get a sheriff's badge?
I didn't.
Badge?
No.
I think you should.
I know. I should have. You're right.
More local government officials. I feel
that's right.
Like
that's right.
Especially just selfishly, city attorneys. I think.
Right.
Just
exactly. Well, and city and county attorneys do have badges.
Yes. Like in Illinois, they call them state's attorneys.
Yeah.
And they do have badges.
Actual badges. Yes.
And I think that's cool.
Right.
I think I might just make one for myself.
Well, you could. Yeah.
I could. But
it could be the ELGL badge.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah, but let's get those going in the merch store.
Yeah.
So what happened after Ramsey County?
Well, I went to the city of Minneapolis, where we're sitting right now.
I've heard of it.
At Brits Pub.
Yeah.
And I was the long-range planning director for 3 years.
Yes. So now...
And that's the last time I talked to you.
That's the last time our listeners may have heard from you. Could you... so that's the end of our lightning round. You have a perfect score. Congratulations.
That was the lightning round?
Yeah.
Wow.
But let's remind our listeners about your work for the city of Minneapolis, which included the Minneapolis 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
It did.
What is it? What is the plan? And
what is a comprehensive plan? So in Minnesota, unlike many other states, we have a statutory mandate in the 7-county metro area of the Twin Cities to do a comprehensive plan every 10 years. And you have a choice of doing either kind of an update to that plan, or you can write a whole brand new plan. And in Minneapolis, we decided to take that opportunity to incorporate a lot of the work that Minneapolis had been doing around racial equity, and in particular some of the very persistent racial disparities in the community, and develop a policy document, a planning document that would become policy in the city over the next 2 decades. So our planning arc for the 2040 plan was a 20-year arc, which was at that time driven largely by the Metropolitan Council, which is the statutory authority that oversees comprehensive planning in the 7-county metro. And they were doing a 20-year plan, and we said we should do a 20-year plan as well. And so we did.
Is that like the regional government?
That's the regional government, yes, yeah. So the Metropolitan Council is the entity that is a creature of the state.
Yeah.
It's defined in statute, and it was originally created to handle environmental issues within the Twin Cities, particularly sanitary sewer. Because we were on the verge of an environmental crisis in the Twin Cities in the late 60s. Yes, that is the proper face for it. It's not dinner time conversation, Dan.
Yeah, for the listener, I made a yucky face.
The yucky face, yes. So they created the Met Council so that we wouldn't have all of this unregulated septic taking care of human waste. That was the birth of the Met Council. Then they have, over time, evolved to be a planning body and provide transit in the community, and so they are a multi-layered regional government.
And so they oversee these comprehensive plans. And I guess in some states, in Illinois where I'm from, the comprehensive plan literally is just that aspirational advisory planning document.
Right.
From what I remember from your conversation a few years ago, there really is a more stringent requirement for the plan. There's the plan, and then there's the zoning ordinances or other ordinances that implement the plan.
That's right.
And that's a requirement rather than like an advisory thing.
Right. You have to put the force of regulation or zoning behind the comprehensive plan once it's adopted.
So from what I remember, there were like a few areas, and this is probably not the only few. There's a real focus on racial equity, housing affordability, and climate change. What are some of the goals in the plan that?
Well, there was a really significant component around climate change.
Yeah.
And around climate refugees in this plan. Kind of gets overlooked now, but at the time that was kind of a cutting edge work that we were doing around trying to understand what the future would bring in terms of in-migration to the state of Minnesota and how that would impact population, how that might impact people's lives in terms of how nice it'll be to live in the Twin Cities. Yeah. So we were trying to get ahead of that. Yeah. And it's interesting now that states like North Carolina, where I work part-time now, are really starting to experience climate change in terms of in-migration.
Right.
And so it's interesting to look back on that work, which at the time was pretty, as I said, kind of cutting edge. And now it seems a little prescient. We're starting to understand that we're going to be a really climate-friendly zone for people to move into.
Yeah. It is like almost 78 degrees here in April in Minneapolis.
Right.
Let's try not to think too hard about why that it's so nice.
Yeah, exactly. It's 80 degrees here today.
Oh,
wow. It's nutty. Yeah. On April 13th, which is crazy.
Right.
But we usually have snow on the ground.
Right, for real. I was walking through all the skyways and tunnels to keep you out of the weather, but I'm like, it's too nice. I gotta get outside.
You definitely don't want to be in the skyway today. Oh, it's gorgeous.
So that's the climate area. What about the racial equity piece?
So racial equity, we in 2015 we were the subject of a couple of articles back to back in the Atlantic, and one was the good life in Minnesota kind of thing.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing the 1970s cover of Time. And the second article was, it's a great place to live unless you're a person of color. And everybody kind of went, because it was, for a lot of people who pride themselves on this being a very liberal and progressive place, we're kind of like, wait a minute, racial disparities like Alabama? And it was really, for a lot of people, white people, it was jarring, I think for people of color, they were kind of like, yeah, we've known this for years.
Yeah.
Thanks for writing an article about it. But, so it was, that was a wake-up call. Minneapolis kind of said, look, we've got to address this. The council said the number one thing we have to do is really think about the next 20 years through this racial equity lens. How are we going to make this community more equitable? How are we going to correct some of these things?
Yeah, how'd the plan address it?
Yeah.
What in the plan responded to that issue?
Yeah, so there are so many elements of the plan that respond to that. One of the biggest ones was a discussion about housing and how housing access and housing tenure and stability was really tied to race. If you were a white person, you had an easier time getting housing, you had an easier time sustaining your housing.
Yeah.
And those outcomes really mattered in terms of things like children's educational attainment, public health. So what we started to see was this picture that was really driven by data that was emerging about how Minneapolis was growing apart racially, how people of color were achieving much poorer outcomes than white people in the community. It was all very clear to us. And when you correlated that across different data sets, you saw an undeniable trend develop, which was that people of color were subjected to outcomes that were not justified in terms of our inputs, both financial and social, and we started to understand that this community was really suffering.
Yeah, and I encourage listeners to check out the your prior podcast appearance that gets really deep into the process and the community engagement and the even visualization of how that came to be over and really fascinating stuff.
We had some great partners there too. I mean, I just have to say that the University of Minnesota and the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs In particular, Dr. Brittany Lewis's work was just fantastic. It was absolutely groundbreaking in terms of us understanding it. Yeah. And then also Dr. Delegard's work with mapping prejudice at the U of M. So those two things really, those two people and those two mapping and data collection projects were really key.
And so this affordability issue you mentioned is like directly related, the housing affordability. So tell me about that part of the plan.
Well, we looked at the CURA study. So the U of M Center for Urban and Regional Affairs did a study of rental housing in North Minneapolis between 2000 and 2000, I think it was 14. And over that period of time, renters of, and they measured this racially, so they were looking at racial demographics. Renters in that area went from being able to afford an apartment at below poverty level wages. People of color by 2014, there were no neighborhoods in the North End where a person of color, particularly a black person, could afford rental in North Minneapolis. So that trend line was unmistakable. Mm-hmm. And what we were also seeing demographically at that time was black residents of Minneapolis who were fleeing to the suburbs, especially the near north and west suburbs, to try and find affordable units, right. Not just to buy but to rent. And so it was a real wake-up call for Minneapolis. We also saw in that time period about 15,000 units of naturally occurring affordable housing flip to market rate housing. So that's part of that trend line. But I think, it's multi-layered and it's complex. We have to look at evictions. We have to look at, affordability, obviously. There's lots of data points to dig into there. And all this is on the Minneapolis2040.com website if you're looking for it.
Check it out. We'll include a link in our show notes, I'm sure.
Sweet.
So in response, I get a lot of the attention and headlines of the plan. I don't know if it's true. Saying, this plan is banning single-family zoning.
Right.
What did the plan really do?
Yeah, the plan did not ban single-family housing. You can still build a single-family home in Minneapolis. Mm. You can also build up to 3 units of housing on a single-family lot. So what it did was it made our zoning more flexible. It allowed current homeowners to think about adding units to their lots so that we could meet our housing needs long-term as a community. And I think this has only gotten worse in the last 5 years since the plan was adopted.
Right.
And so what we were trying to do was encourage the market through regulation to address our housing shortages. And it has to some extent, but not as much as we'd hoped it would.
Yeah.
And I think that's, probably that's the story in most communities in the United States. There are some exceptions, cities that came after us, like Portland, Oregon, parts of California, have done really excellent work at more housing uptake.
Yeah.
In these kind of like ADUs and, alley-loaded properties where you have a apartment or like a duplex off the alley. Those have been very successful in the Northwest, less successful here in the Midwest. Our housing typology here in the Midwest is resolutely single-family, 40 to 50-foot lot, alley-loaded. We love the very Euclidean zoning of the single-family home. So hard to break that habit.
I love my alley at my house. Take that, New York.
I know. I love mine, too.
Anyway.
I love it. I can't lie.
And anyways, so this is my, and you mentioned that it's very influential. A lot of other places
seems like it,
are paid attention to it and implemented,
Yeah.
or at least started conversations elsewhere about it.
Right. Yeah, we sparked a conversation, and I think that was really amazing, actually.
Yeah, that had to be very rewarding. So that's the plan, kind of where we left off last time. But what happened in terms of implementation during your time at the city?
Yeah, well, I left in March of 2020, and we had COVID like 2 weeks later.
Oh my gosh!
So that's such a good question, Dan. What were we doing? I'm not sure. Well, I was sitting on my sofa in my sweatpants. No. Okay, I'm totally kidding. Cut that. No. So Minneapolis,
I'll leave it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was too.
Yeah, because we were all doing that, right?
Yeah.
I think Minneapolis, tried very hard to move forward with implementation and with changing their zoning code, their regulation to meet the direction of the comp plan.
Yeah.
Early on in that process, in fact, even before the council adopted 2040, there was a lawsuit filed. And that lawsuit was initially they filed a request to the judge to actually prohibit the council from voting on 2040. And the council though prevailed, and the judge said no, they can vote on it.
Right.
And so they did vote on it. They voted 12-1 to approve it. Mm-hmm. And then the staff started bringing forward zoning amendments to start to implement the regulation. But the lawsuit persisted over the course of about 3 years until late last year, was it? Maybe earlier this year. The judge, after the appeals court sent it back to him, the judge did rule again and say that the city could not implement 2040. And so right now we're in a little bit of limbo here as the city thinks about their next steps. As I understand it, I'm not obviously involved anymore, but as they consider their next step with regard to defending their right to local control and regulation through a comp plan. And so that's kind of where we stand right now. So some of the elements of the plan were actually implemented, and some development happened as a result of that implementation. So if you drive around Minneapolis, there's a couple of projects that kind of got in under the wire.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see those because they are exactly what we envisioned.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So they did talk about this at a law session at the conference today.
Oh, good.
And so they, and I think one of the it was in the context of one of the themes. It was a zoning reform session. My friend Brian Connolly, who listeners of this podcast might have heard, Brian's been on the podcast too, was talking about, a lot of these zoning reform efforts. A lot of people are, celebrating, high-fiving after it's passed.
Right.
But what we're seeing, especially in these recent years, is that there are tools available to opponents of these efforts that through litigation, through initiative or referendum in some states where it's allowed.
Right.
But specifically in Minneapolis, the plan was challenged by a number of organizations under the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, alleging
MIRA.
that the plan required environmental review due to the prospective impact of new housing development. What's MIRA? What's the Environmental Rights Act?
Yeah, the MIRA statute is really a statute intended to protect Minnesota's environmental and natural resources. I mean, in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. So think of it as a tool that we use to protect open space and lakes and animals and rivers and really maintain what we value so much about Minnesota and its beauty.
Yeah.
And MIRA was never intended to be a land use zoning regulation tool.
Yeah.
And so when the group that sued the city over 2040 utilized it, they utilized it in such a way that the statute actually says explicitly it exempts comp plans from application of MIRA. So what they argued was that the comprehensive plan needed to go through an environmental impact statement under MIRA, when in fact the statute itself as written exempts comp plans from that process. And the reason it exempts them is that a comprehensive plan is a planning document.
Right.
It is not a development document.
Right.
So we might say that the comp plan recognizes that there may be 10,000 units of housing built in the next 20 years, but it does not stipulate that, and it is not a plan to be reviewed because it's not a plan for development.
Yeah.
It's a plan for planning. And this is an area where I think cooler heads may prevail at some point on this issue, but this was the thread that they pulled to get their case heard by the judge, and the judge was ultimately swayed by that argument. Now, the legislature is trying to address that now by going back and cleaning up the language in MIRA. So this has raised kind of an interesting conversation, but I think it's a very cynical application of MIRA.
Yeah.
Because it's not what MIRA was intended to do.
Right.
And in fact, Minneapolis 2040 was written as an environmentally conscious document that was intended to address and prevent some of the impacts of things like a warming planet, or an in-migration of people to the state, or loss of habitat for animals. There are all kinds of elements in the comp plan that are very pro-MIRA, is how I would describe it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an irony, and I think pretty cynical that it was used in this way.
Yeah. So for the listener, the district court initially dismissed the lawsuit as exempt from MIRA, probably for the reason you said. Went up to the Minneapolis Supreme Court and sent it back. The district court ultimately enjoined, meaning stopped the implementation of the plan for failure to conduct the environmental review. But as you mentioned, the state legislature is considering legislation that might exempt comp plans from that contemplate increased residential density from MIRA. So there you go. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I also think it's interesting because the comprehensive plan, we did do the equivalent of a large EIS.
Yeah.
We looked at every system, because it's a systems document. We looked at every system: sewer, water, transportation, transit, land use. And we assessed each system on its ability to support additional population and additional growth.
Yeah. So there was definitely a EIS, environmental impact study, I guess.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of environmental work in the plan, I'm sure.
Nope.
So what advice do you have for local governments, cities looking to adopt similar plans in their communities?
Well, I'm of the mind that big problems like the ones we're all facing, because every community in the United States is facing significant social and environmental pressures right now.
Yeah.
I think it takes some bold and courageous action to address those things. And that's, for most of us, that's why we're working in local government.
Yeah.
Because we want to do things that improve our communities. We believe strongly in our communities, and we want to see them succeed. So, big problems take big, bold action.
Take bold action. That's the message. But as you mentioned, you ultimately left the city.
Yep.
How'd you make the transition from the city ultimately to Urban3?
Oh my goodness, there's a lot of water under that bridge. Yeah, I started out consulting independently for a couple of years. I did an interim gig with the city of Bloomington, where I was their community development director for about a year. Then I went on and did a little bit more independent consulting, and then I landed at the Center for Economic Inclusion, where I was managing consultant, and I worked on racial equity issues. And that was really great, and I really enjoyed my time there. I left last December when Joe called me and said, I need you to come to Urban3, and he and I had known each other since the days of the comp plan. So I think I'd known him for about 10 years. He did a value per acre study for us in Minneapolis, actually. And we used a lot of that data and visualization work in our comp plan. So that's how I got to know Joe. And then I went there in early February, actually. And so I run a lot of the operations of Urban3, and I will do kind of the work that Joe does out on the road, giving presentations and lectures and doing a lot of business development. So that's what I'm doing now, and I really enjoy it.
So Urban3, do I need to see Urban 1 and Urban 2 to appreciate Urban3?
Urban 1 and Urban 2? I don't know who they were. Was that like Star Trek 1 and Star Trek 2? Or yeah, right.
I'm guessing no. But
okay.
So what is Urban3 exactly?
Well, Urban3 is a data visualization firm. So we are GIS nerds, and we take parcel level data and we turn it into maps and visualizations, which is really, really interesting. And here's how I think of it. I think of it as a way to visualize data that can be really complex for lay audiences. So people who are not planners, people who are not city managers or finance directors or engineers, right?
Yeah.
We take that data and we show it in a way that they can that communities can understand it and they can digest it.
This sounds like a lot of what you were doing in the 2040 stuff.
A lot, yes. It's a natural fit.
What a nice little thread there.
Yes.
So what kinds of projects are you working on?
Oh gosh, right now we're working all over the country. We're working in Canada. We might be working in Australia again soon, which is exciting. We've done work in New Zealand and Australia previously. And, Australia is like 50 years behind the U.S. in terms of some of the issues they're dealing with. And it's really interesting to do work in Australia because they're very much like the United States in so many ways, in terms of land development and in terms of social issues. And Australians are wonderful to work with and really creative. So Australians combine like this perfect kind of centralized planning approach of Europe with this sort of independent, like, let's get creative approach from the U.S. It's like a really interesting space. So we're working a lot in Florida at the moment because of some of the work that we're doing around with our Floridian communities around things like land use and new developments and the impact that that's having environmentally. We're also doing some really interesting work around sea level rise.
Yeah.
And maybe the most interesting work that I think we're doing is our work correlating redlining and current zoning practices and taxes. And some of the most groundbreaking work comes out of a very creative partnership between some academics and Urban3 around how to look at how properties are valued and how taxes are imposed.
Oh, interesting. So, what's your favorite project you've worked on so far there?
At Urban3?
Yeah.
I haven't really worked on a project yet. I've just been there since February.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, we just did modeling for We just did modeling for Springfield, Missouri, and that was a really great project. Really good modeling.
Oh.
So I would recommend that for sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very, very exciting. But what do you miss about working at the city, and what do you like about being a consultant?
Well, it's interesting. My new job is very government adjacent, so I still work with all these people, and I love them. And they're still my people, right? So I think it's actually a great fit for me that way, because I don't have to sort of be not of the city anymore. I'm not in the city, but I work with all of them still. Yeah, and it's like the best of both worlds. So, and I still live in a city, and I still care about where I live, and so I'm more involved in things kind of in my neighborhood, which is great. And I haven't really been able to do that, and that's been super fun.
That is fun. I like. I'm not an in-house lawyer. I'm a lawyer for cities and many cities and villages and park districts, what have you. You get to see a lot more places, and I still feel like I'm in a part of the team, Right,
exactly.
It's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds. I
25 years in local government, I made a lot of friends in local government too, and so those relationships are still strong, and so I still think that the profession itself is incredibly important and valuable, and I want to see young people get into it. because it's so important that we draw young people into the profession now.
Yep, that's why we're talking to you on a podcast. Maybe we'll toss this on a TikTok or something. I don't know, but heads up, young people, get involved. But that kind of brings us to today. You moderated a panel at the American Society for Public Administration conference. What was it? How did it go?
It was a panel on the Center for Economic Inclusion's Racial Equity Dividends Index, the READY Index, for local governments. So when I was there, Nathan Arnosti, who's the Director of Analytics, Maggie Dalton and I did work on the index, and we deployed that to 23 jurisdictions in Minnesota. And it measured all kinds of metrics around things like human services, public safety, housing and transportation, all the things that you and I have just sat here and talked about, and then gave these cities a dashboard to work with for the future. And so that's what we were talking about today, and it's a great piece of work. You can find it on CEI's website, centerforoeconomicinclusion.org, and it's just a great piece of work. You can read the aggregate report, and I think it's going to shape some really good policy work over the next several years here in Minnesota, and they're hoping to take that nationwide over the next year. So I'm excited about that. And very much want to be promoting that, because I think it's an important tool for local governments. What you measure, you manage. I always screw that up. Let me take two. What you measure, you manage.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. What gets measured gets improved. Data, and the organizing it and visualizing it in a way that is accessible and meaningful and usable for folks. That's a big thread through all the stuff we've been working on. That's really fun.
Yeah, it was great. We had a great group today on the panel. Shout out to my colleagues from Bloomington, Faith Jackson, and Minneapolis, Prince Corbett, and my colleague Pat Trudgeon from Roseville, and then Nathan Arnosti, Director of Analytics. We had a great panel. We had a great audience. It was fantastic. So thanks, ASPA.
Oh, neat. And then you came here.
Then I came here.
And this interview went pretty well, I think.
This is what?
This interview went pretty well, I think.
I had fun.
I had a blast. What else should I be doing in Minneapolis this weekend? What else do you have planned for Minneapolis this weekend?
You know, I'm teaching right now, and I need to grade papers tomorrow, so I know that's pretty exciting. Yes, I know. So I'll be grading papers tomorrow for all my students who are listening. Don't worry, I will get your grades by next week. What are you teaching? I teach administrative law, which is all about law for administrators, not for lawyers. Ah. So this is not a law class. It's a class about regulation and rulemaking. Okay. That's what I teach. I love it. You know what? I think it's a really fun class. I think it's a fun syllabus. We have fun. So even though it's a little bit of a dry subject, I think we still have fun. It can be, but it's super important. I agree. I mean, if you're going to go out there and be a public administrator, you have to know how to do rulemaking and regulation. You just need to know that. Making decisions according to standards. Oh. Yeah, I know, right? I love it. It's a topic after your own heart, Dan. It is. Man. Yeah, I know. I love it. I know. Well, so yeah. Well, that's exciting. Grading papers is fun. What should I do for fun in Minneapolis? You should try to get to the Loons game tonight, because it's going to be fantastic. It's a beautiful night. The Loons are Minnesota United. Okay. Our Major League Soccer team. Okay. I'm a season ticket holder. Go Loons. Go Loons. And it's great. It's in Minneapolis. You can take the train over. It's right on a light rail stop. Love the train. Great beer, great cider, great food at the stadium, great environment. Okay. Love it. Love the Loons. I'm being told I need to go to Matt's Bar for a Juicy Lucy. Is that? Oh, maybe you should. Yeah. But I don't know. Do you really want molten hot cheese burning your tongue? I know that's up to you. I kind of do. Okay. I mean, it sounds more appetizing than what we do to folks in Chicago. We make them drink Malort. You know what? Yeah, I'll get you a Malort if you come to Chicago. Okay, I'll definitely be coming to Chicago. You know, that's an interesting observation. I do like
the Chicago vibe. I feel at home here so far. It's been 19 hours.
Well, and I got to tell you, I mean, I always think of St. Paul as kind of a tough guy town. So, Chicago's a tough guy town.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is a tough guy town.
I'm real
Philly
tough.
is a tough guy town.
Okay.
Boston's a tough guy town. So I'm just saying, not to leave out the South, Atlanta might be a tough guy town. I don't know. But,
might be.
But here's the thing, you should feel simpatico, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough guy town. Actually, go to the Nook and have the Juicy Lucy there. It's pretty awesome.
The Nook.
The Nook.
Good tip. Good tip.
Randolph and Hamlin. Yep.
Got it. Any final thoughts? Anything else you want to share with our listeners?
No, I guess I just say, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great work.
Yeah.
Keep getting curious. Keep asking tough questions. Keep being courageous.
A lot of people were encouraged to do that with the 2040 plan, and look at you still doing it in your career. I do have one last question for you. If you could be the Gov Love DJ, what song would you pick as our exit music for this episode?
I think I just have to say I'm Free by The Who.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll add it in post, but I will give you an opportunity to sing it right now.
No, that's good. I'm good. Thanks.
Well, that ends our episode for today. Thanks for coming on and talking with me. Gov Love is produced by a rotating cast of ELGL volunteers. ELGL is the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. You can reach us at elgl.org/GovLove or on LinkedIn at GovLove Podcast. Thanks for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
If I told you what it takes to reach the highest high, you'd laugh and say nothing's that simple. But you've been told many times before, Messiah's pointed to the door. No one had the guts to leave the temple.